Right. These are the basic objectives. The standard filtering, counting treatment for intangible assets, recognize and intangible assets, measure the carrying amount, disclosures. The other 4 areas we are learning. In the areas come. Definition, identification, disclosure. The main objectives, right? End of the discussion, you have to achieve this thing, right? These are the 4 criteria we can use for the identification, right? These are the criteria we are using for the identification. Controlled by the entity, expected future economic benefits, expected to be used more than one period. Take up with the hand, but you need to focus this as well, right? This is very important. But it is identifiable assets without physical substance. This is it's the critical feature we are referring here. Right? ඒක තමයි මම හොඳටම ફોકස් කරගන්න ඕන. Very important. Right. Identifiable asset without physical substance. Intangible asset is a identifiable asset. It means this. Identifiable asset can make. Make and look at asset can, sorry. Make an asset can, right? So asset features is this. Identifiable can look at identifiable. The QA separated or divided from the entity and sold, transferred, licensed, rented, or exchanged. It should be exchanged. It can be exchanged, transferable, or sellable. So basically, it can be separated from the entity, right? Arising from contractual or other legal rights, regardless whether those rights are transferable or separable from the entity or from other rights and obligations. What is that? Arises from contractual or other legal rights, regardless of whether those rights are transferable or separable from the entity or from other rights and obligations. So, as an entity, you may have rights rights and obligations. Right? Rights and obligations. Rights mean that can be used for future economic positive impacts. Obligation means we are bounded to provide something. It may be negative. So obligation, once you are reducing obligation, it will create asset. Once you are earning through right, it will create an asset. Right? Okay. Once you have rights and obligations, having this, it can it be transferable? If it is so, it's intangible asset. Let's say you are getting maybe liquor license. Liquor license එක ගන්න. Water කොහොමද? Private bus ඕන කෙනෙක්. route permit එක ගන්න. Route permit එක අරගෙන ලොකු ගාණක් spend කරනවා. ඒක වාට transferable. Can it be recognized separately? Yes, it is transferable. We can sell it out separately. If it is so, it is a intangible asset. So liquor license එක ගන්න එක. Liquor license එක ගන්න එක මොකක්ද නෙමෙයි. ඒ license එක we can sell it out. We should check කරන්න. If you are getting some license for a location, specific location can't be transferred. Maybe wine stores. Once you are getting that license, that can be transferable. We can sell it out for some other party to do that same activity in the same location. Right? There's a separate value for that. We can recognize that separately. Definitely, the right and obligation. You have a right. You are the person should use, otherwise you can't sell it out. If it is so, you can't sell it out. Right? If you remember that. Right. Control over the assets. Control can further discussed. Control over the asset. Control over what? Future economic benefit. Restricts access of others to benefits. Controlling future economic benefits mean controlling what? Future economic benefit. The restrict, if it is getting to outside, then restrict. That's all about what? Controlling the benefit. අපි මෙතන ලියනකොට මතකද කතා කරා. Control over what? Future economic benefit. You remember that. That's asset definition, right? These are the different ways intangible asset can be acquired through these areas. Right? What the note take a commission up. Put a note. Intangible asset. Right? Intangible asset. Intangible asset. These are the critical things we should learn, right? Intangible asset. It is an asset. It is an asset. It is a identifiable asset. Sorry, it is an identifiable asset without physical substance. It is an identifiable asset without physical substance. Identifiable means identifiable means identifiable means capable of being separated or divided from the entity. Separated or divided from the entity and sold transferred licensed, rented or exchanged. Or whether its rights are transferable or separable from the entity. Or whether its rights are transferable or separable from the entity. That's called Nadianipa. But Angate identical means simply it is separable from the entity and its right and obligation can be identified separately. Two things, separable right and obligations can be identified separately. That's it. That's all identifiable, right? This is not required, right? Future economic benefits are common content. It is not specifically related to asset. It is related to asset, not specifically for intangibles, right? Basically, if you are dealing with future economic benefit, if you are dealing with control, that's all about future economic benefit, right? Here, intangible asset recognition criteria. Yeah, intangible asset recognition criteria. We have to it is probable that it is probable that expected future economic benefits. It is probable that the expected future economic benefit that are attributable to the asset will flow to the entity. That are attributable to the asset will flow to the entity. And the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. The cost of the asset can be measured reliably. The other two recognition criteria. මේ දෙක ලියාගන්නේ. ඒ දෙක ඔයාලා ලියාගන්න එක වැදගත්. මේක තියෙනවට වඩා. මොකද that transaction between your mind and the book. I hope you know, right? Once you are getting this printout, it's not that much viable, not that much, effective. Make sure to write it because you will face to a writing exam, right? This is important. Probable. Probable क्या अनुपात है? Any idea? Probable. Probable. At the point of probable, you need to recognize. In accounting, we have 3 different stages. What are they? What are they? Remote, remote, possible, probable. Remote, possible, probable. Right? We are not recognizing remote things. We are not recognizing possible things in the GL. At the point of only probable, you need to wait till the stage of probable. Right? That's why we are recognizing development cost. Why? That's an example. Once you are doing research, there's a possibility of return. But are we recognizing? No. There's a possibility, but not probable. You need to wait till probable stage. If you remember, that's all about account. Or contingent liability. Contingent asset. Contingent liability මොකක්ද probable නැහැ. Possible. Possible නම් අපි මොකක්ද කරන්නේ? Possible නම් අපි මොකක්ද කරන්නේ? Possible නම් accounting වල මොකක්ද කරන්නේ? Disclose කරන්න. Probable නම් account කරනවා. Account කරනවා disclose කරනවා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? What do you mean by it? Probable නම් we are passing double entries, right? We are keeping records. Records mean we are putting double entries in the GL. That's called recording. Disclosing means we are not putting to the GL, we just give details, right? If you remember these things, sharply right? And cost of the asset can be measured reliably, right? You can put initially intangible assets should be recognized at cost. Initially, intangible asset should be recognized at cost. At cost. At cost. Subsequently, it will be cost or revaluation model. Subsequently, it will be cost or revaluation model. That depends on the management policy decisions. Management's policy decisions. Management apostrophe comma management's policy decisions. Once you are changing that, it's a policy change, right? Policy change, okay? Policy change මොනවද the standard එක? Is case 8. Case 8 නේ. එහෙම එකක් අහලා තියෙද? Accounting estimate, sorry. Error correction and policy change, right? Okay. Intangible asset can be acquired through separate acquisition, through government grant, through business acquisition, internally generated through exchange. Through exchange. These are the possible ways of getting intangible asset. The ways of getting intangible asset කියලා දාලා මේ හලියා ගන්න. These are the ways. These are the what do you call that? These are the different types of possibilities to acquire a intangible asset. Separate acquisition through government grant, through business acquisition, internally generated through exchange, through exchange. Hello. County declared pound of the equipment part. The Asami Minigan. What are they? These are the ways, these are the possible methods we can acquire a intangible asset. Whatever the intangible assets you are having, we can put to this. So this development cost internally generated. Right? What method දාලා තියාගන්න පුළුවන් මොන වගේ එකක්ද? Internally generated intangible asset එනවා, but internally generated goodwill can't be recognized as a intangible asset. Internally generated goodwill can't be recognized as a intangible asset. But for your note purpose, you can put. So internally generated can, but not goodwill, right? Keep remember that. What do you mean by this? Through government grant, government will be given free some, intangible right. May area what a good may another business maybe one gold face side again. Mahari shop patan. Puluan daw ni patan. So you have government approval. Government approval. If you are doing some type of maybe tourism or something like that, that sector specifically for you, free of charge, government will give that, government will grant that option to you. There's a value to that. If you are having that type of a grant, maybe a permission, maybe a right, maybe some intangible thing, maybe some software, right? So if it is intangible, right, you can recognize that as an intangible asset. That will be so. If it is asset, past criteria what? Is asset intangible asset? Asset criteria done. Intangible asset criteria done. Grant criteria done. If it is so, you can recognize that grant as intangible asset. So the grant intangible asset satisfy well known. Asset, intangible asset, grant features. Government grant standard in your case 20 government grant versus government assistance. That is very clear. Government, what is the government is? What's the government grant? What's the government assistance? What's the difference between all those things? You should have a proper understanding. Right? Government can give maybe general facilities. Maybe, drain system, sanitary facilities, irrigation, system. Those things can't be recognized as a government grant. Right? It's a general, facilities. So government grant should be specific to that entity. Right? Specific to that entity. This financial benefit should include to that entity specific. And then and there you can recognize a grant. If it is coming through without physical substance, if it is identifiable, then it's an intangible asset. If you remember that, right? I hope it's clear. So here we have separate explanation about separate acquisition, how we are having at the separate acquisition the intangible asset, right? normally once you are having this identifiable asset, the consideration we are giving, if we are giving more than that, we consider that as an intangible asset, right? Acquisition in a business combination. Recognize a consolidated set of financial position. Must not amortize. Must test impairment at least annually, right? So, goodwill arising in business combination. Goodwill, internally generated goodwill. Goodwill can be recognized according to the accounting standard. Which point? At the business combination. Business combination, goodwill can be internally generated goodwill can't be recognized, but the goodwill can be recognized at the business combination. But you are required to recognize. You are required to recognize the goodwill at the business combination as per SLFRS 3. SLFRS 3. See, read this. Must not amortize. Why? Is recognized goodwill at the business combination must not amortize. Must not amortize. Why? It is indefined. We don't have a useful lifetime. Because of that, must test for impairment at least annually. It should be done. Annual impairment. What is that? At the business combination, once we are having a goodwill, we don't have a defined, the useful lifetime. Because of that, we have to do annual impairment. That's it. Well, this is learned. Read this. That's why I told internally generated goodwill must not recognize as an asset. Right? Internally generated goodwill can't be recognized as asset. Why we are not recognizing internally generated goodwill? Reason is it's not an identifiable resource that can be reliably be measured. That's why we discussed, right? Why we are not recognizing internally generated goodwill that can't be recognized separately. Separately identifiable criteria are not matched. That is inside the business. We can't separate from the asset. We can't separate from the staff in the organization, right? Because of that, as a result of that, internally generated brands, business and published titles, customer lists, and the similar items, similar in substance must not be recognized. These are internally generated. They make part take up. Goodwill. Goodwill හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ කොහොමද? Goodwill will be included. These things. Right? internally generated brand name, we are not recognizing as a goodwill. Right? At which point we are recognizing? At which point it will be recognized, rewarded. Once you are selling it off, once you are doing business combination, you know that hotel sold to Soplogy, Tara sell karane hotel. Once you are selling that out, hotel having a very strong brand name in the market, but have they recorded as an asset in the books? No. Why? It's internal generated brand name. They have not recorded. But at the point of selling it out to the net assets of the company, we are having offer more than that. More than that. What is that offer? Why they are paying that? To the goodwill. Goodwill included brand name. Right? Goodwill included brand name. Not only brand name. Not only brand name. All other things. The quality of the staff, everything. So we can't separately identify it for sometimes. We can, as a bulk, we identify that as a goodwill. Right? Right. The other forms of internally generated intangible asset must be assessed to ensure that qualify for recognition. Other internal generated good, other internal generated intangible asset like with development, you need to ensure that probable future economic benefit occur and reliable determination of cost of asset. If it is so, we can consider research and development cost. Research cost is a P&L item. You remember that. Right? Research base. Read this. අපි note එක මොකද වෙන්නේ? note එක ඔතෙන්ද නැවතුයි. Right. Internally generated goodwill. Balance. Right. We make it this way. As mentioned above, internally generated brands, masters, publishing titles, customer lists, and items similar in substance must not be recognized. Main statement here. Right? Must not be recognized. Must not be recognized. Must not be recognized. How we started that? Escalation. As mentioned, right. Must not be recognized because such asset cannot be distinguished from the cost of developing the business as a whole. Because such assets, such assets cannot be distinguished from the cost of developing the business as a whole. Maybe underline cannot be distinguished. What do you mean by that? Distinct. Distinct කියන එක cannot be distinguished. Right? Okay. Clear? However, other forms of internally generated intangible asset, other forms of internally generated intangible asset other forms of internally generated intangible must be assessed to ensure they qualify for recognition. Example, development cost. Development cost. Example, development cost. Development cost will be recognized as intangible asset if below mentioned criteria are met. Below mentioned 6 criteria කියලා දාගත්තත් හොඳයි. 6 criteria are met. Write this 6 criteria in short form, right? In short form. Technical feasibility, Don't put, all the words. If I'm asking in the exam, make a exam making. Make a debara take a paper. Two times in the same way. That extent is simple. Right? Technically feasibility. Intention to complete. Ability to use or sell. Economic benefit will be generated. Adequate resources to complete. Ability to measure reliability. The expenditure attributed to the IA. Ability to measure reliability. The expenditure attributed. So these are the 6 criteria should be met. Exam එකට එනකොට මේ ටික නේද? ලියාගෙන හරි එන්න ඕන නේ. ලියාගෙන එන්න ඕන කොහෙද? ඉතේ තමයි ලියාගෙන එන්න ඕන. You have to write this in your head. Right? Right. So these are the example economic benefit of an intangible asset. These are the cost will incur. Cost should be measured reliably and the benefit should be measured reliably. Cost and benefit. Whatever the incurred cost and benefit should be measured reliably once you are calculating intangible asset. If it is development cost, this should be measured reliably, right? This was written cost or evaluation method we can use, right, to intangible asset, right? Useful lifetime we discussed, it will be finite. It means you are having a useful lifetime. It may be undefined. Undefined means not same meaning as infinite. Define can finite. Right? All these are in the slide, right? Okay. Amortization, like depreciation, right? You can do determine reliably straight line method can be used. Then recognize to the profit or loss, right? Residual value assumed to be zero unless there is a commitment by third party to purchase it at end of the useful lifetime, or there's an active market for asset. The keep residual value zero unless there are any agreed party to purchase. Otherwise, if you are putting a residual value for This is not having physical substance, the asset not having physical substance, we are expecting a disposal value. Putting that value may not be that much accurate. So if you are putting a residual value for intangible asset, there should be a buying party, identified buying party. Otherwise, don't recognize the residual value, right? That's for your knowledge, right? So that's it. Again, these are the disclosures, right? Put that disclosure requirement කියලා disclosure requirement. Useful life identified or infinite. Amortization method, gross carrying amount, different line items, reconciliation of carrying amount, identified intangible asset, individual material intangible asset, fair value asset disclosure, aggregate amount of R&D. So research and development, we do have proper disclosures like this. Whatever the selected 3 items mentioned. Right. By this, as per IS, as per 632, as per 632, as per 632, Exercise C. The cost incurred for website development. The cost incurred for website development. Development that meet the recognition criteria of that meet the recognition criteria of IS 30, LKS 38. IS 38. The development phase cost can be recognized as a intangible asset and be capitalized as an intangible asset. That's the ideal word. And be capitalized as an intangible asset. And then ongoing maintenance cost should be recognized as a P&L item. Should be recognized as a P&L item. Right. So that's it about LPS 38, intangible asset. Now we know what is intangible asset, examples, what are the points we are generating intangible asset. We know that internally generated goodwill can't be recognized, but internally generated some of the intangible asset can be recognized like development, right? The development criteria should be satisfied. Otherwise, we can't recognize that as a internally generated intangible asset, right? So we are having 6 criteria need to satisfy. Keep remember that. And as intangible asset, the key feature is it should be identifiable, separable from the entity for the sellable purpose or identification purpose, right? And then intangible asset can be measured, cost or evaluation, initially cost, subsequently cost or evaluation. Evaluation gain will be passed to the OCI, not reclassified to P&L, right? So the intangible asset having finite useful lifetime, please amortize, right? And don't use a residual value if you are not having the identified buyer, right? If you are having indefined useful lifetime, definitely that should be considered for annual impairment, right? Accordingly, related disclosures should be given in the financial statements. That's all about intangible assets. I hope it is clear. Any doubts? Any questions? Want to clarify? I hope it is done and dusted. Right. We are moving to guess 23. What is that? Borrowing cost. Borrowing cost. Borrowing cost. Any idea about this? Borrowing cost. What it means to you? Borrowing cost. What it means to you? Borrowing cost. What is it? Loan. Borrowing can loan. Loan costed. Loan costed can borrowing costed. In other words, interest. Right? Interest. Interest. Interest we are paying for what? Credit risk. Credit risk means the doubt of not receiving our capital and whatever the benefits, whatever the invested money, that's called credit risk. Recoverability of the invested money and the return. The doubt we call as credit risk. As a benefit to this credit risk, we are giving interest to the bank. So the question is, as an entity, we are getting loan or borrowing, right? Borrowing as a funding source, it's a finance decision, right? Once you are getting that loan, question is, we are paying this interest. Our double entry is very clear. What is that? Once you are putting interest cost, that's a double entry. What's a double entry? Interest cost, this expense, debit, credit, cash or interest, payable, credit. Take the P&L like an right? Take the asset, take the liability, later impact. Okay. Question is, this is not correct some instance. We are not going to put to the P&L at some instance. Some specific instance. What is that? We are going to capitalize it, not put into the P&L. We are going to capitalize this. Capitalize this. Capitalize this. What's the double entry there? Capitalize can recognize that as an asset. What's the double entry? Asset account debit, credit to cash or other account. Right? Yes. Yes. How? The entire wagi yes. Now after 7th or 6th. Oh, now how many location is that? Oh, yes, yes. Okay, right. Other than that, okay. Right. Capitalize me, put in that to the asset account. Put that to the asset account. It means once you are paying our interest, we are not putting to the P&L, we are capitalizing it. Very, once you are seeing this, once you are getting this is abnormal type of thing. So we are not doing this. Maybe I can't give a percentage. Question is how often we are doing this? What are the scenarios we are doing this capitalization? Very rare instance. Whatever the other instance, we are put into the P&L. Right. So, which point we are doing this capitalization? Which point? Which point? At what time? What are the assets? These questions will be discussed under this tab. Right? Which point we are supposed to capitalize to as asset? That's a question we are addressing to this tab. It's called borrowing cost. Borrowing cost should be capitalized only for which asset? Qualifying assets, yes. For qualifying asset, we are capitalizing. Otherwise, we are parking to the P&L. What are the assets? Qualifying asset. This is the word we are learning from the standard. Qualifying asset. What is the word we understood from intangible asset? Identifiable words. This is qualifying asset. Very key word. Key word of the standard. Qualifying asset. Qualifying asset. The asset will get substantial period of time to get ready to sell in a usable condition. Substantial period of time mean more than 1 year. More than 1 year. More than 1 year. More than 1 year, it will be a PP&E or maybe a building or inventory or IP, whatever they say. Whatever they say. What do you mean inventory here? What do you mean by inventory? Inventory. Are we getting more than 1 year period for creating inventory? Is that possible? Samples? Yes, possible. What's the example? What are the examples? Maybe aircraft, maybe a ship, maybe a ground, right? It will take more than maybe construction, right? But more than 1 year. In a construction company, that's inventory, right? Let's say you are preparing apartment and selling the real estate business. Your inventory is what? buildings maybe. Right? So it will take some time. So for qualifying asset, we are capitalizing to the asset. And at which point we are stopping that? At the point of you are completing that asset, you need to cease your capitalization. And then that point onwards, you need to park it to the P&L. Right? You need to park it to the P&L. Right? You need to stop, you need to terminate the capitalization. Right? Is that logical? Is that logical? Why we are stopping that point? වා මේක use කරන්න ගත්ත ගමන්ම නවත්තන්න කියනවා මේක. Use කරන්න ගත්ත ගමන්ම නවත්තන්න කියනවා. At the point of we are coming to the usable condition, sellable condition, you need to cease your borrowing cost capitalization. You need to cease your borrowing cost capitalization. Till that, building එකක් හදාගෙන එනවා. නේද? Maybe 2025 Jan, 2023 Jan use කරන්න ගන්න start කරේ. Jan till December still හදනවා. 2024 still we are constructing. 2025 June 30th, 2025. House is completed. You got the certificate, right? Completion certificate from the engineer. For this onward, loan value how much? Loan value 20 million, 20 million, 20 million for 5 years. For 5 years. 5 years. Here we have 1, 2, 2.5. 2.5 years completed. Another 2.5 years we are having. Another 2.5. This 2.5. This 2.5 capitalized. This 2.5 P&L. Right? At the point of completion, till that day onwards, you are charging to the P&L. Is that logical? මොකක්ද වාගේ නකන්න ඩිරෙක්ටර් බෝඩ් එක. ඇයි ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක කියවන්නේ මෙහෙමයි කියලා කියන්න බෑනේ ඔයාලා. නේද? ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක කියන නිසා මෙහෙම කරනවා කියන්න බෑ ඔයාලට. Audit committee එක. Board of directors. Audit committee having directors having audit and accounting understanding. But board of directors may come up with different sectors, where doctors, engineers, and marketeers, they are come up with different perspectives. They are asking, why one loan, one interest rate, but at a time we are parking to the P&L, one time we are parking to the asset. What's the meaning of that? Why you are doing it? Is that meaningful? You can put it to a, if it is so capitalized, use one simple mechanism. That's simple. Why you are using two different methods? Why? ඒක තමයි වාගෙන් අහන්නේ. වා කියන්නේ උඩ මොකද්ද? ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකේ කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි කියනවා ඕනේ නැහැ නේද? වා එතකොට කරන්නේ මොකක්ද? රිසෙප්ෂනිස්ට් ගේ ජොබ් එක. රිසෙප්ෂනිස්ට් මොකද්ද කරන්නේ? කවුරු හරි ආවම මෙන්න මෙතන බලන්න. ප්‍රශ්නයක් ආවම වා ඉන්න ඕන ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකේ තියෙන්නේ මේක කියන්නද? නෑ. ඒක තියෙනව නේද? PDF එකේ search button එකක් තියෙනවනේ. ඒක search කරන්න. Your role is not to refer the standard. You need to explain that what's the reason for having this. Why we are having this? Why we are having this? You know that this is, we are developing not a house, maybe a story building, right? Till this day, are you generating cash from this building? Are you getting income from this building? no income, zero income, right? Zero income. We got this loan specifically for this building, right? Specifically for this building. It is so, if you are putting that P&L in this period, maybe interest, maybe, let's say, 250,000 for 2.5 years. Make a P&L damn. Without the income, we are charging the expense. Still, this asset it started to generate revenue. At that period, specific loan interest, how can we put here? Right? We can keep inside and then you can start to the P&L. Right? If you can, once you are capitalizing that, that will add to your building, right? You can admit it for the building. Building complete 2,000 you have to depreciate. Once you are depreciating, the day you are incurring, earning revenue, you are charging to the P&L. This is like what? This is borrowing cost is like a delaying your charging to the P&L till the revenue generation. Right? Are you getting me what I'm telling? Wow. Asset take earn current account, you are waiting till charge to the P&L. You are the capitalized borrowing cost will charge to the P&L as a depreciation. Because there now capitalized කරන borrowing cost එක depreciation විදියට පටන් ගන්න දවස් ඉඳලා P&L charge. So you are delaying charge to the P&L. තේරුණාද කියලාද? Right? So once you are capitalizing this, you are having different rates, right? Different rates. Let's say you are taking 3 loans for this period. 3 loans. Specifically for this period, this project, this house. So use that specific rates, right? Let's say you are getting one loan, right? One bulk loan. 30 million. You are using 20 million for this building. You are using another 10 million for some other purpose, operational purpose. If it is so, you have to give weightage. Weighted average rate should be taken. Right? Keep remember that. Here we have a question. The May, at the point of completion, you are stopping your capitalization. Period. Without completing, you are having 1 year period. We didn't do anything. Again, we start and we are doing. With this period, however, you are stopping your development. Is there some other reason? Sometime of maybe COVID, sometime maybe technical, not technical, business reason. We have invested some money, some other reason. Because of financial situation, they are delaying. May delay loan interest bank. Are they delaying because of this delay? What you are supposed to do? In this period, we need to charge to the P&L. Question is that a technical delay? Technically, it is required. Let's say we are developing a bridge to fix this cement and everything. After putting that concrete, it will take 2 weeks to fix it. It's a technical delay. If it is technical delay, you can capitalize. So obviously we should have that delay. It's part of the production. If it is a delay because of some other factor, definitely you can't capitalize. Keep remember that aspect as well. That is specific, that can be tested in the exam. So that is a specific point examiner very interested to ask. The technical delays and normal, the inefficiency related delays, right? Related disclosure should be done in the financial statement. That's about borrowing costs. Now we are going to see the standard. Going to see the slide deck. Then on the slide deck to balance මොනවද තියෙන්නේ කියලා. Right? That's the understanding you should have. Okay. Borrowing cost, right? Borrowing cost recognized as directly attributed to the asset expense in the period. There are two types, right? As I mentioned, mostly we are charging to the P&L, right? And directly attributed to the asset. So which point we are capitalizing the asset and the charging to the P&L. So applying on borrowing cost does not deal with actual or inputted cost of equity, right? Not required to apply on qualifying asset measured at fair value, biological asset. Inventories produced on large quantities on repetitive basis. Not required to apply on qualifying asset measured at fair value. Qualifying asset measured at fair value. What is that? So the qualifying asset, it is a qualifying asset. That asset may be required more than 1 year period to usable condition, right? If it is so, borrowing cost no need to be charged to the P&L. Not need to be charged to the P&L. Why? No need to capitalize. Why? No impact. Always you are doing the fair valuation. Once you have fair valuation, it will charge as a fair valuation loss to the P&L. Because of that, you are not charged to the P&L. So what's the example? What's the example? What's the example? Sometimes in biological asset, parent birds will take some times to get maybe eggs, right? Chicks will take some period to have eggs. So the parent birds also having small period, chick period, right? To pass that period, it takes some time. At that period, it's a biological asset. They are not recognized that as a. If we are having borrowing over there, we are not recognizing that as a borrowing cost. Right? These are the things. Interval loan is that. So the channel. Interval या करेंगे ना आवश्यक ना अभी तक मैं स्टैंडर्ड देखा करना borrowing cost इवैल्यूएट कर ले investment property कर borrowing cost अंकार इवैल्यूएट कर पूरा right. So now we have already done. We are going through the content. So राजा आप standard तुमना में गए ना जाते हैं सत्तर वेन को we are learning 3 different standards. अंकार नहीं है. Ondan
It is mostly damage and only return I think
something to want.
If you understand, you have to go find out. Veo que el caso de la chica no va a caer.
Claro, por el calor, me
Gun.
Right. So you were discussing about this borrowing cost, right? Uh, as we discussed, borrowing cost is a cost element to the entity. We have a decision that whether we are going to capitalize or not, right? Are we consider that as a cost or asset, right? That's a decision we need to get. We'll go through that content of the slides and easily understand what's the borrowing cost, the definition. Borrowing costs are interest and other costs incurred by an enterprise in connection with the borrowing of funds. That's very important. Borrowing costs are interest and other costs. Interest cost එක විතරක් නෙවෙයි. අපි මෙතන කතා කරන්නේ. We discuss the interest cost. වගේ තමයි discuss. But if remember that not only interest cost, some other cost, loan arrangement cost, some type of some other fees, right? All these we consider as a borrowing cost. The cost we incur to arrange the borrowing, arrange and maintain the borrowing, right? Very important. Interest and other costs. Including borrowing costs. Borrowing costs are interest and other costs incurred by an enterprise in connection with borrowing of funds. Put that note. Case 23, borrowing cost. What do you mean by borrowing cost is this? Highlight these two words, interest and other cost. right? So what are the borrowing costs include? So these are the examples. Interest on bank overdraft and borrowing. Basically interest, right? Amortization of discounts or premiums on borrowings. Whatever the no, discounts or premiums, right? Basically, once you are getting this nominal interest rate, once you are converting into the effective interest rate, this will charge to the P&L. P&L or it will included to the borrowing cost, right? Amortization on additionally cost. So whatever the other cost, right? Additional cost means some other cost elements related to the borrowing, right? Finance charge or finance lease. Exchange differences arising from foreign currency borrowing. That's very important. Foreign currency differences. That's also should be part of this. Let's say you are taking a borrowing from foreign country, foreign bank or some fund. So once you are paying that, the foreign exchange impact also, which impacted to increase your cost. That cost element also part of the borrowing cost. You remember that. That's also very important. Right? The borrowing cost can be classified into two. Look at the diagram. Borrowing cost can be classified into two. Above borrowing cost can be classified into two related to qualifying asset, related with other borrowing cost. Related to a qualifying asset, related to other borrowing cost. Right. Related to with the qualifying asset, related to a other borrowing, right? Qualifying asset is an asset. Yeah. A qualifying asset is an asset that necessarily take a substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. This definition is very critical. Qualifying asset is an asset that necessarily take a substantial period of time. ඒක අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් කොහොමද? More than 1 year. More than 1 year. දෙකක් තියාගන්න. Examples may be inventories, manufacturing plants, power generation facilities, intangible assets, investment properties, right? Qualifying asset. Right. These are the examples, right? right? So these are the recognition criteria. Capitalize expense. So recognize other borrowing costs as an expense in the period in which incurs, right? Directly attributable to the acquisition, construction, or production of the qualifying asset as part of cost. We need to capitalize. No need to write this. That's the basic understanding you should have, right? So the borrowing cost eligible for capitalization, capitalization rate, these are the doubts. Commencements of capitalization, suspensions of capitalization, cessations of capitalization, partial completion, impairment. So these are the areas we need to focus. These are the topics we need to address. Right? These are the key topics. Capitalization rate. Capitalization rate is what? Which stage we are commencing to the capitalization? At the point of you are starting your production. Commencement of the capitalization. Once you are starting your production, that date onwards we need to capitalize. Suspension of capitalization. At the point of completion, at the point of available for use, you need to stop and not stop. If you are having abnormal delays, at that point you need to suspend, and then the at which point you are going to stop. Cessation of capitalization. Which point you are going to stop? මේවට අපි clear තියාගන්න. Weighted average rate for borrowing, right? Borrowing. Commencement of capitalization at the start of production. Suspense of capitalization. If there is a abnormal delay, you need to suspend. At the point of completion. And then partial completion. Some point. Impairment. Impairment means we need to test that asset impairment test of that qualifying asset. Partially complete. Adala partially complete kar. Partially complete කරාම ඒ completion stage එක වෙනකම් විතරයි අපිට capitalize කරන්න පුළුවන්. If you are going to stop that for a period, at that period you can't capitalize. Right? Can't capitalize. Anyone? Commencement of the capitalization and the start of the production. At the start of the production system. Suspense and cessation. What's the difference? Cease करना कैसे क्या लेते? Suspense, cease करना क्या? Stop करना. Suspense क्या है? In between we are stopping. Cessation क्या है? At the point of finishing, completing, cease the capitalization, right? Suspension here, if we have a significant delay or something like that in between, we are going to stop it, right? It is called suspension. Partial completion, we are going to complete part, and that part only we need to capitalize. Then and there we are cutting to the P&L, right? Right. So these are the disclosures. If remember that, if there's a technical delay in the production process, there's no any suspension of borrowing cost capitalization. There's no any suspension of borrowing cost capitalization. Borrowing cost capitalization, right? Example. ABC Construction Company. making sorry, the structural company is making a bridge, a bridge, a bridge, a bridge. It was started 1st January 2024. Started 1st January 2024. After completing, the structure, the construction was stopped for a month. For a month. For a month. To dry it, to dry it. You dry it. For one. To dry it. That period, that 1 month period, should be considered as a technical requirement. Technical requirement of the process. Technical requirement of the process. Since borrowing cost relevant for that month should be capitalized to the asset. Since the borrowing cost relevant for that month should be capitalized to the asset. Right? I hope it has okay. So required disclosures. Put this. Required disclosures. This. So that's it about borrowing cost, right? Further, if you want to put a star and say that the interest cost interest cost capitalized to the asset, interest cost capitalized to the asset is an allowable deduction for taxation. The allowable deduction for taxation. Since it will create a temporary difference till the depreciation charge. This will create a deferred tax liability. But tax liability to the asset that we carry. Only that. So create a percent liability. අද මොකද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ වගේ ඒකෙදි අද අපිට borrowing cost එක අද accounting විදිහට මොකද කරන්නේ assets එකට capitalize කරනවා හරි අපිට මේ tax එකට අඩු කරන්න දෙන්න tax calc කරන්න ඒත් අපි asset එකට capitalize කරාම P&L එකට expense එකක් ආවෙන්නේ අපේ accounting profit එක යවුවද වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා හැබැයි අපි මේකේදී tax එක පැත්තෙන් මොකද කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපි අඩු කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපි ගිහිල්ලා tax calc කරනකොට අඩු කරලා තියෙන්නේ අඩු කරා නම් අද අපි මොකද කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපි අඩු කරා tax එකකින් එතකොට අපි අඩු කරා නම් tax එක එතකොට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ කීයක්ද tax එක අඩුවෙන් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ අපිට ඉස්සරහදී ගෙවන්න වෙන tax ඒක නිසා deferred tax liability එකක් තමයි book වෙන්නේ keep remember that because of borrowing costs will create a temporary difference for deferred taxation මේ ටික තමයි deferred tax ගැන deferred tax උත් කතා කරලා තියෙනවා each and everything we discuss right once you are discussing deferred tax දාලා ලියා ගන්න LKS 12 කියලා ඒක කතා කරනකොට අපි further study කරනවා deferred tax right here we have a new standard LKS 40 investment property investment property. It is a property. It's a property. It is a property using for renting purpose. It's a property. Property means land or a building or both. The property using for renting purpose or capital appreciation called as capital property. Right? So property, the management using that for renting purpose or capital appreciation. We call as investment property, right? Investment property. The difficulty is to identify IP versus PPE. This is the difficult part. This is the area management will play around. They are putting here IP, PP&E, right? This is the purpose. This is the purpose. Verifying it, deciding it, creating a complexity. Right? Whether that property can be considered as PP&E or IP. Sometimes one building having four different floors. Two floors will be PPE. Other two floors will be IP. Right? Why? These two floors using for admin, operation, production process. These two has been rented out. Rented out. If it is so, part is IP, part is PP&E. Right? So that's the recognition. We need to identify. It is our gain asset. Gain asset. Asset recognition criteria are there. Asset recognition criteria are there. We need to recognize that asset. Right? So the future economic benefit, measured reliability, available for use, all those things should be considered. Right? And then critical point is measurement. Initially measured at cost. Initially measured at cost. That's all right. And subsequently, cost or evaluation. Cost or evaluation. Revaluation gain or loss. Loss. What are done? What are done? Take a P&L එකට දාන්න. ඒක තමයි වැදගත්. Revaluation gain or loss transfer to P&L. PPE නම් revaluation gain or loss. So OCI. OCI no recycle to P&L. OCI. Right? It's a difference. Right? IP gain transfer to P&L. If you are using cost method, amortize. We don't call as depreciation. It is amortization. Again, like a intangible asset, amortization with impairment, right? It is cost method, right? And then other critical point is transferring in between PPE to IP, IP to PPE, IP to inventory, inventory to IP. These are the things can be tested. Transferring in between two categories. What are they? What are they? IP, inventory, PPE. IP තමයි category එක මේ standard එක. IP ඉඳන් inventory වෙන්න පුළුවන්, IP ඉඳන් PPE වෙන්න පුළුවන්. PPE ඉඳන් IP වෙන්න පුළුවන්, inventory ඉඳන් IP වෙන්න. මෙන්න මේ scenarios හතර test කරන්න පුළුවන්. What you are supposed to do? Can we happen this type of things? Inventory ඉඳලා IP වෙනවා. Inventory, yes. Inventory, maybe you are a real estate company. your inventory, you are preparing buildings. One building you transfer to IP. Renting purpose you are using. Right? Can be. And you are having a PP&E. So we have had PP&E 2 floors. We decided to give another floor for rent purpose. Then PPE to IP. We had 2 floors for IP. The production expand. Other floor also we are using for admin. It means that IP to PPN. IP to PPN. This transferring process should be very transparent, and it should be business oriented. And that decision should be taken not to manipulate profit, but for the business perspective. Right? Standard very clear that once you are transferring from PPE to IP, once you are transferring PPE to IP, but they can. අපි use කරේ admin ඉඳගෙන. Admin ඉඳගෙන IP mark කරනවා නම් the initial point gain, the initial recognition gain, that gain, transferring gain, definitely should be transferred to OCI. Transition gain should be transferred to OCI. Further gain and losses can be charged to PNL. මොකක්ද ඒ කියලා දෙන්නේ? IP. Once you are transferring to IP, your evaluation gain should be transferred to PNL. IP, PNL. But if you are transferring PPE to IP, at the transferring point gain, can't be recognized to PNL, should be transferred to PPNE, OCI. Why they are giving that? Management එක මොකද වෙන්නේ? එකපාරට profit එක වැඩි කරන්න ඕන ගමන් they are changing their objectives. Right? They consider one part as a rented part. They are manipulating. So at that point, if they are recognizing a gain, that can't be charged to the BN, that should be go to OCI. That's a one critical thing. Right? So IP perspective, these are the critical aspects we need to focus. What is that? Definition, classification, recognition, and then transferring in between inventory and PP&E. Mainly, we focusing about property, right? It means land and building. Okay. So we need, end of the day, we need to do the impairment test. So that's about investment property. That's a summary about investment property. Okay. That's a summary about investment property. So these are straightforward definitions. Cost carrying amount, cost fair value, right? Carried amount is the amount at which an asset is recognized in the statement of financial position. That's the amount we are keeping in the balance sheet. Carrying amount means cost deducting amortization, deducting the yeah, right? Cost means the value we are incurring to sorry. Cost is the amount of cash or cash equivalent paid or fair value of other consideration given to acquire an asset at the time of its acquisition. For construction law, where applicable, the amount attributable to that asset when initially recognized in accordance with the specific requirements of other SLFRs. The SLFRs to share-based payment. So these are the costs we are supposed to incur. Incur to acquire that asset or develop that asset. Right? Fair value is the price that would be received to sell an asset or pay transfer liability in an orderly transaction between market participant and a measurement date. This is very important. Fair value definition. Fair value definition. This definition, very strong and very powerful definition. So previously, before we are having a SLFRS 13, right, we had a definition for fair valuation. It is bit now. It is not that much strong definition, right? It was discussed about arm's length price between market, buyer and seller, arm's length price, the fair value. So we were struggle to identify the arm's length price, but here this fair value definition is very strong definition. What is that? Is the price. These are the key topics we need to focus. Is a price, right? Would be received to sell asset, transfer or pay to transfer liability. The orderly transaction between market participant at the measurement date. These are key topics. So the orderly transaction, that transaction should be orderly transaction, can't be forceful transaction. Right? Market participant, buyer and seller. Buying party and selling party. We can't say that buyer and seller. Sometimes buying party having many people, selling party having many people. Right? Buying party and selling party. Wow, birthday කට ගේනෝ නේද? Birthday කට celebrate කරන්න. මොකද ගේන්නේ? cake ගේන්නේ. So buying එතකොට එකේ නෑනේ. Financial reporting ඉවර වුණු දවසට අපි මේක මේ වදේ ඉවරයි කියලා නේද? Celebrate කරන්න cake ගේන. So buying party having many people, right? Selling party has each baker. Buying party represent many members. So how we can say between? Here we consider as two parties, buying party and selling party, right? Orderly transaction, that's very important. That can't be a forceful transaction. The buying party and selling party having knowledgeable and willing parties, right? It can't be a forceful transaction. Why part marry කරන්න වෙනවා. Degree අරගෙන convocation ගිහිල්ලා marry කරන්න plan කරන් හිටියේ. ඒක suddenly you were required to marry it within another 1 month. What you are going to do now? You are selling your motorbike, right? You are selling only asset you had is a motorbike. You are now going to sell it. At which price you are going to sell? Whatever the possible price you are putting in Mikman.lk, whatever the forum or marketplace or something like that, and no buyers, they are asking for some small money. You are selling to your friend. Friend is looking at you, and this is a high time he can buy it in a very low price. He took it. How about that price? It is not a orderly transaction. It is a forceful transaction. There's some independent factor will impact to that transaction, right? Keep remember that. This is very important definition. Once you are discussing at corporate level SFRS 30, we need to be very focused about this definition, fair value, right? Once you are doing evaluation, means fair valuation of IP. That's why we are learning here. Okay. Right. So this one discuss investment property is a property, earn, rental, or capital appreciation or both rather than for use of production, supply, goods or service, administrative purpose, sale in ordinary course of business. This can be inventory, this can be PPI. Right. This is the definition. Okay. So the owner of occupied property is a property held by owner or by lease as a right of use asset for use in production or supply of goods or services for administrative purpose. It's a PPI, right? So then basically IP is the main objective is earn, rentals or capital appreciation. Keep remember these two words. Rental or capital appreciation. That's very important. Once you are getting this IP words, your mind should go to this definition. That's a property we are keeping for renting or capital appreciation purpose. That definition should be with you anyhow. ඒක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න. ඒක that's important. That's a must, right? Right. Examples. This is also very important. Property that is being constructed or developed for future use of investment property. So that once the period we are passing as a WIP, we consider as IP, investment property, right? A building that is vacant, but it is held to be leased out under one or more operating leases. It is a renting purpose, right? So all are examples. You can easily understand that. First one, land held for long-term capital appreciation rather than short-term selling orderly course of business. Right? Land sale company එකක්. Land sale company එකක් නම් ඒකේ inventory වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ගොඩක් කාලේ නම් තියන් ඉන්නේ මේක. You purchase a land and keeping aside. It's a bare land. You are expecting to have more money in future. It is a capital appreciation, right? So these are not investment properties. If read this, investment property name, unoccupied property, uh, unoccupied property awaiting disposal, property occupied by the employees, unoccupied property including property held for future development, subsequent use of unoccupied property. And these are unoccupied property. So these are PP&E. This is good point. Unoccupied property awaiting disposal. And unoccupied property we use for admin manufacturing purpose. So we are supposed to sell it now. Today we are going to sell it. It is a PPE disposal, not a IP. We can't say that we are keeping for capital appreciation, right? That's a very tricky point we need to focus. Some people may say, we use this for PP&E. Now we are planning to capital appreciation. No. Till the disposal date, we are using that as admin purpose. Right? If remember that. If remember that. How we are going to recognize it? This recognition criteria, right? Probable future economic benefit associated with the investment property will flow to the entity. At that point onward, being recognized. That cost of investment property can be measured reliably. Those are the two criteria. Whatever the asset, biological asset, or maybe this asset we discuss about what other asset we discuss? Investment property. We discussed today morning. This that we discussed that? Tangible asset discussed. ඒකෙදිත් මේ criteria දෙකම කතා කරන්නේ. Yes, asset recognition criteria. Keep remember to recognize asset. These are the two criteria. Initially, we are recognizing cost, whatever the asset. Subsequently, IP, PPE, intangible asset. Three standard giving two options, cost or evaluation. Cost or evaluation, right? Cost or evaluation. After initial recognition an entity, choose the fair value model shall be measured all of its investment property at fair value, except in cases prescribed in paragraph 53 in LKS 40. Paragraph 53 in LKS 40. After initial recognition. To refer this paragraph 53 later, right? Paragraph 53 later. A gain or loss arising from changes in fair value of investment property shall be recognized in profit or loss for the period in which it arises. Discuss so whatever the fair value gain or loss should be transferred to P&L. That's very important. Right? These are theories you need to read through. So this is the example we took here. Some properties comprise a portion that is held for earned rentals or capital appreciation. And another portion is held for use for the production or supply of goods or services or administrative purpose. If these portions could be sold separately, an entity account for proportion separately. Then make right? IP, PP, and E separately we should recognize if it is separately recognized, separately sold, separately use. Right? Then we have a flow can luck there. We have given some outside, or else maybe a subsidiary company. So one flow we have taken. We have given that to subsidiary company. How we can manage it? No need to recognize part is a IP part and PP&E. We can consider that as an admin, or we can consider that as PP&E. We can charge some amount to subsidiary company, right? If the portions could not be sold separately, the property is investment property only if an insignificant portion is held for use for the production, supply of goods or service. What do you mean by that? Make a commonly used very insignificant portion used production or supply. We can consider that as full property as an investment property. Remember that. Intercompany rentals property leased to and occupied by this parent or subsidiary does not qualify as investment property in consolidated financial statement because the property is unoccupied property from the perspective of group. Such property will be investment property in the separate financial statement of the lessor. What do you mean by that? So I checked this question in the latest corporate reporting paper. So latest corporate reporting paper, I tested this question. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? We have given our property to a subsidiary company. Then what will happen? It's a renting purpose. Let's say I have a company, it's a parent company. Parent subsidiary, I hope you know that. Group company may have parent subsidiary, parent, ultimate parent, and many subsidiaries, right? So once you are having this type of a structure, parent can give some buildings for renting purpose to subsidiary. Subsidiary can give some buildings to the parent for the renting purpose, right? For individual perspective, once you are using for the renting purpose, individual perspective is a IP, right? It's IP. Once you are consider that as a group perspective, what is that? It is a PPE. So the group becomes serum subsidiary serum. You think that as a one entity, right? If you assume that as a, if you have rented out, you can't consider that as a. You can't consider that as a what? You can't consider that as a PPE. You can't consider that as IP. It should be a PPE. Why? I have rented to, as a parent, I have rented to subsidiary, right? We have recognized that as IP. Once you are moving to PP&E, once you are moving to group column, group perspective, that building is used for the subsidiary admin purpose, right? As a one group, all together using for the admin purpose. If it is so, as a group, there's no IP, right? If you remember, that's the story it's telling. Group perspective does not qualify as an investment property in consolidated financial statement because the property is owner occupied from the perspective of the group. This can be done at the consolidation, right? Transfers. Right. So here we have transfers. Owner occupied property to IP, IP to inventory, right? Inventory to owner occupied property. So here we have several transfers, right? So we discuss about this. මෙතෙන්දි කතා කරපු එක තමයි මේ කියලා තියෙන්නේ. අපිට හතරක් කිව්වනේ. එහෙම දෙකයි. ඒ හතර තමයි ලස්සනට කියලා තියෙන්නේ. Right? Yeah. So for transfer for inventories to investment property, that will be carried at fair value. Any difference between the fair value of the property at the date of its previous carrying amount shall be recognized in profit and loss. The inventory to IP, whatever the things, P&L, gain or loss, right? The entity completed construction or development of itself constructed, that will be carried at fair value. Any difference between fair value and property at the rest? P&L. Why? At the point of WIP, function transfer to IP, it's obviously it's a IP. That gain or loss transfer to P&L. This one. The entity shall treat any difference at the date between carrying amount of the property in accordance with LK 16, property plant and equipment and its fair value in the same way as a revaluation in accordance with LK 16, property plant and equipment. Right? Should be recognized as a revaluation. Right? It's done. Actually, I'm coming to disposal. Very straightforward. Once you are transferring, once you are selling IP, recognize the gain to P&L. Recognize the gain to P&L, right? So what are the disclosures you need to do? The depreciation, amortization method. If you are transferring, transferred value, fair valuation inputs, and investment property carrying amount, reconciliation, and cost, the net book value, all the things should be disclosed. Fair value cost model, everything should be disclosed, fair value model and cost model, right? So these are the things we need to disclose, right? Acquisition through business combination, asset classified as held for sale, gain on from fair value adjustment, everything should be disclosed. Disclosures are very important. Each and every standard, you need to understand the disclosures. Whatever the things we discuss, transfers, valuation, measurement, All these things should be disclosed. If you are using fair value model, fair valuation level, inputs, maybe sensitivity analysis, all the things should be disclosed, right? That's it about investment property. Investment property, note take a here. Not live. Yes, we need to make it a proper note. Yeah, we. Note ලියන ගම තුන් පාරක් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක ස්ටඩි කරන්න. ඉස්සෙල්ලා ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක කියලා දෙනවා. ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක මේකින් බලන්න. right? note ලියන ගණන් හදන. හදලා we are ready for something, right? We are ready for not for the exam but for the earning perspective. How we are using this standard for my job. That's the familiarity you need after doing this course, right? This basically this degree. That's expectation, right? Today we discuss what financial statement analysis, other techniques. What are they? Common size financial statement, trend analysis, and horizontal analysis and vertical analysis, right? Okay. So this pros and cons and the methods we discuss. And then we move out to intangible asset definition, intangible asset, the co-identification, right? So it should be identifiable, right? Identifiable asset without having physical substance is intangible asset. We understood that what are the intangible assets, what are the areas we are getting intangible asset, right? So internally generated goodwill, including this brand names, all those things can't be recognized. But development type of things can be recognized if they are satisfying this recognition 6 criteria, right? So then we discuss about website development cost and the disclosures, right? We move out from that and learn about borrowing cost. Borrowing cost is a cost incurred by a company for qualifying asset. Qualifying asset. Qualifying asset is an asset. It will take substantial period of time to get ready for selling purpose or selling purpose or usage, right? That's a qualifying asset. That period, if you have technical delay, we can capitalize the borrowing cost. If there's an abnormal delay, we need to cease the capitalization. And at the point of completing that, we need to cease our capitalization. So we started to learn IP. IP is an asset, not asset. IP is a property using for capital appreciation or renting purpose or both, right? So for this one, we are initially recognizing for cost, subsequently cost of revaluation. That revaluation gain should be transferred to P&L, right? So once you are having this IP, there's the very critical discussion about once you are transferring in between IP, PPEO, PP, IP, PPEO, inventory. Once you are transferring, that point, very important, the perspective of the management. You need to evaluate that. And accordingly, you need to recognize to P&L or OCI. Once you are transferring PPE to IP, please remember that transferring point gain should be transferred to OCI, right? IP should be recognized to the cost. Subsequently, you can recognize to cost or evaluation. If you are recognizing to the cost, you need to amortize it, right? You need to amortize it. So the related disclosure should be disclosed in the financial statement. That's about investment property, right? I hope these 3 standards, it was not a hurry. Clearly explained. Now you can start your learning, right? I'm planning to give assignment next week about these 3 standards, right? Then come again. So then I'm planning to give assignments on these 3 standards. හොඳට practice කරලා ගණන් හදලා නේද? හොඳට ready වෙලා එන්න. standard 3 ගැන. ඒකට ඔයා හොඳට දන්නවා standard 3 ගැන නේද? අන්තිම මොහොතේ පාඩම් අර normal lecture pattern එකේ ඉන්න එපා. lecture එකේ වාඩි වෙලා ඉන්නවා. හිමීට යනවා. end එක එනකොට මුකුත් දන්නේ lecture එකේ හිටියද නැද්ද කියලා. ඔන්න පාඩම් කරන්න පටන් ගන්න. යාළුවන්ගෙන් අහගන්න පටන් ගන්න. ඒක pattern එක මෙතෙන්දි break කරන්න. This is financial reporting. Ongoing way we need to learn it. Right? Console නම් නේද? First day ඉඳලා learn කරන්න. පළවෙනි දවසේ ආවේ නැත්නම් සති දෙකක් තුනක් ආවේ නැතුණත් කමක් නැහැ. එතකොට කොහොමද අල්ලන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ consolidation. මැදින් අගින් අල්ලන්න බෑ console. යාළුවගෙන් අහගන්නත් බෑ console නේද? You have to be in the classroom. Right? So then ongoing way, please learn this. And next week, once you are coming to the class, definitely you have to read through this content, be familiar with the content we discuss, and you'll have a good assignment, right? Not a type of a very easy one, good assignment, and we'll make it. And we need to ensure that we are in a very live class, live lecture, right? So that's expectation for today. That's it. The auspicious time came 3 o'clock, right? So thank you very much for today. So I hope you had a good time.